Hey everyone, Seth Campbell here with the new Segue Says podcast, and a rare guitar one at that. Well, this episode is going to feature one song that we've seen before in a new context, and another song that we haven't. Both are guitar-centric songs, and both of them include a violin, which is actually something that will come into play when we discuss the Segue. The two songs are Dust in the Wind by Kansas and the Downeaster Alexa by Billy Joel. Now, these two songs are both in the key of A minor, and they're at relatively the same tempo, maybe not exactly the same, but close enough for our purposes. Now, these two songs have a different feel. Dust in the Wind is much gentler, and it's a finger-picked song, as Downeaster Alexa is a lot harder hitting, and it's strumming. But they actually have some similarities, and we're going to look at those. Now, first, Dust in the Wind. Again, we've covered this before. I actually know a little bit more about the song now than I did when I segued Looking Forward by Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young into it. It was actually written and for the album Point of No Return, no spelled with a K, N-O-W. It was added to the album at the very last minute because Kerry Livgren, the band's guitarist, was just doing this picking pattern as a warm-up, and he would do it when he was at home, and he started writing a melody over it, and legend has it that his wife said, "Hey, this is really good, you should put this on the album." And Livgren wasn't sure because Kansas, and I mean, I guess if you know Carry On My Wayward Son, you know that Kansas is known for more experimental rock, prog rock, really complicated stuff. And so Livgren wasn't really sure that this, the band would be accepting of this, very simple little song. But they were. They needed a little more space on it. They needed one more song for the album. They put this on, and it was their highest charting hit of all time. So, go for it. It works out. Now, I should say my guitar playing is remedial. I'm working on it. I'm getting better. I'm not going to be picking the exact notes and patterns, but the rhythm is basically correct. So it's really a simple, what's known as Travis picking. So it's da 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 is the sort of the rhythm that you hear when you listen to the guitar part. And it's a verse refrain, goes a little, well, I guess it's a verse chorus, you'd call it a chorus, I suppose. Goes a little something like this. I close my eyes, only for a moment, and the moment's gone. All my dreams pass before my eyes, a curiosity. Dust in the wind. All we are is dust in the wind. And then it goes to the next verse. So it's a very pensive, philosophical song, just sort of looking at how so much of life is insignificant in the scale of the universe, that we're only here for a brief moment and everything we do comes and goes. So it's a very, I don't know if I would necessarily say it's a sad song, because it's not really bemoaning that fact. It's just like, when you think about it, we're really just dust in the wind. And this song has a section in the middle, between the second and third verse, with a violin solo. And violin is one instrument that I cannot play to save my life, because I have no depth perception and there are no frets, so it's a little hard to do. I was able to scratch out Spooky Lane by Sam Bush on my sister's violin one time. That's as close as I've ever gotten. So I am going to do something that I am only marginally better than violin at, and that is whistle. So the solo in the middle goes something like this. And I actually did a slightly different line at one point there because I mentioned this in the other episode that features Dust in the Wind. My first introduction to this song was not the Kansas version. It was a cover by Inca Sun, the Peruvian folk band that I had been obsessed with as a kid and then eventually met and performed with a few times, which is its own long series of stories. But they covered Dust in the Wind for one of their more cover-heavy albums. And instead of a... their pattern is... So that one's been in my brain a little bit longer, so sometimes I revert to it. Actually, funny thing about the Inca Sun version, and I think I mentioned this in the other video as well, they do one chord differently. And I don't know which member of the band came up with this. If I had to guess, it would probably be Santos, the guitarist, an amazing musician who would always have these cool reharm ideas. Instead of this D over F sharp, dust in the wind. So D over G sharp, D over F sharp, excuse me, G, A minor. Their version goes D over F sharp to F major, then A minor. So all there is dust in the wind, which is very different and a bit jarring. I like to do it in the very last chorus. All we are is dust in the wind. Just to throw that one last chorus, last hook, throw a curveball to the audience. So that is Dust in the Wind, and in fact that Peruvian version, the Andean folk instruments, which I hugely recommend checking out. It's spectacularly done. They do one other thing in the arrangement, and that's to go to that sort of middle solo that's played by a violin in the original a second time, and then vamp on the A minor at the end of that. Now that's going to come in handy for this segue, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, Downeaster Alexa is a song off Billy Joel's album Stormfront, which came out in 1989. And it was a departure for him because a lot of the songs on it were written on guitar instead of on piano. And indeed, for the next album, The River of Dreams, a bunch of them were as well. He had kind of replaced a bunch of his longtime band members and was really changing his sound because he'd kind of gotten bored with what he was doing, and Mick Jones of Foreigner actually produced this album. So Downeaster Alexa is a song about the fishing industry, and particularly, you know, the Long Island fisherman. Billy Joel grew up in a fishing port town, and so he would know a lot of the fishermen, and he would hear stories about how just kept getting harder with licensing and restrictions and overfishing, and payment going down, costs going up. And so this is a song from the lament of a fishing boat captain who knows that this is the life he chose, and he has to see it through, but by God, it's getting hard out there. And like I said, it's mostly strummed. Well, I'm on the Downeaster Alexa, and I'm cruising through Block Island Sound. I have charted a course to the vineyard, but tonight I am Nantucket bound. We took on diesel back in Montauk yesterday, left this morning from the bell of Gardner's Bay. Like all the locals here, I've had to sell my home. Too proud to leave, I work my fingers to the bone so I could own my Downeaster Alexa. And that goes into the second verse. Now, a couple of things you might notice. First thing is the way, and I try to convey this with the guitar, but you have to really listen to the recording to hear what the drums are doing, because rather than a 1, 2, 3, 4, it's kick, snare, it's half time, so it's kick, 2, snare, 2, 4, kick, 2, snare, 4. So it gives you this really half time feel, which is common in a lot of sort of sea shanty, seafaring music, because it sort of mimics the whoosh, whoosh, the rolling waves. And so that was a deliberate choice when they were recording it, and boy, do I think it pays dividends. Now, you might already be noticing a couple of similarities. And for starters, the first 3 chords of the verse in each song are the same. I close my eyes, that's C, G. Although it does keep this tension 11 C natural in the finger pattern, but the chord is C, G, A minor. And then it goes to other chords that are less important for the segue. It's G, D minor, A minor, if you were wondering. But Downeaster Alexa, it's the same thing. Well, I'm C, G, A minor. And then it's C, G, F, and it does some other things here. But those first 3 chords are the same. Now, in the first one, in Dust in the Wind, the melody goes up. And in Downeaster Alexa, it goes down. But the chords are the same. And the length of the chords is the same. The A minor is twice as long as the previous 2 chords. Now, the other thing is that while these 2 guitar approaches are very different, if you listen to the emphasized beats, da 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 da. Now listen to Downeaster Alexa. It's a little different. Da da da. Now it only does it every other time here, but there's still that da 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 da. It's not exactly the same, but it's got this similar emphasis kind of sitting on the back half of each beat. So that's kind of what sort of connected these in my head. And the other thing they have in common, as I mentioned, is that there's violin. And the funny thing about the Downeaster Alexa violin is if you look at the sleeve for the Billy Joel album Stormfront, and you see the credits for the song, it doesn't tell you who the violin player is. It literally says, world famous incognito violinist. And I don't know how widely known the truth about this was, nor do I know the reason it was kept a secret. But I believe it sort of came to public knowledge in early 2015 when a documentary came out that I believe was about the New York chamber music scene. That it was actually the one and only Itzhak Perlman playing the violin on Downeaster Alexa, which, I mean, that's amazing. How would you ever know that? And right around the time this was revealed, I saw Billy Joel in Madison Square Garden. I don't know if I've mentioned this on this podcast before. It's the one time I ever, I was healthy enough to have gone to my classes and didn't in college because I loved Berkeley and I loved all my classes. I took the day off to drive down to New York with my family to see Billy Joel and drive back that very same night. And to be totally transparent, I had 3 classes and all 3 of my teachers basically said the same thing, because I told them about this ahead of time because I don't like lying. And they basically all said the same thing, like, I can't condone you missing class when you would be able to attend. But it's Billy Joel, go ahead. I love my professors and I'm still in contact with so many of them. So they understood. So this was around the time that this had just been revealed. And, when Billy does his Madison Square Garden shows, he tends to do things to make them extra special. And one of those is to have guests, whoever's sort of in town. And he had Itzhak Perlman come out in his motorized wheelchair and play Downeaster Alexa. And then the rest of the band left the stage, and the 2 of them played a duet version of And So It Goes, also from the Stormfront album. Beautiful, beautiful ballad that I don't know if we talked about on the podcast. I can't remember. I've done so many of these things now, and it's been so long. And that really was the day that pushed me over the edge on concert crowds, because people were chatting. It's like, Billy Joel and Itzhak Perlman are playing a duet of And So It Goes on the stage. What are you talking about that could possibly be anywhere near as important as this? If it's an emergency, you should already be out the door on your way to dealing with it. I digress. But anyway, so yes, there's violin on both of these tracks, and in a similar style. I don't really know what the proper term is, but sort of scalular patterns and solos. There's the violin solo in the middle of Downeaster Alexa after I've still got my hands on the wheel. Yo! Yeah, yo! Something to that effect. I don't know the exact note for note solo on that part, but it's a similar thing. So I kind of had these two songs in my head as they've got a lot of commonalities that could be used. What's the right way to do the right way to do it? There is no right way for any of these, but like, what is the optimal way for me as the kind of performer I am? Now, if you have a band, particularly if you have a violin player, you've got this one sewn up. But particularly if you're doing solo, I have a couple ideas for how it could work, and I'm going to share them with you now. I personally like to do Dust in the Wind first into Downeaster Alexa. I don't really like to do it the other way, because it's such an escalation. Dust in the Wind, like I said, much more, thoughtful, introspective, quiet, sort of a little more delicate. And then Downeaster Alexa is it's an aggressive lament. It's a cry of frustration, and it's much more intense in tone, in melody, in everything. So I think Dust in the Wind works better first. So now, as I mentioned, the version by Inca Sun goes back to that middle violin solo at the end, which I do not believe the Kansas version does. So it has the same, and then it kind of vamps on this A minor pattern, which the original bridge does the same thing. It lands on this A minor. Don't hang on, nothing lasts forever but the earth and sky. So rather than go to another verse, I like to do the same little stop. Well, I'm on the Downeaster Alexa, and I'm cruising through Block Island Sound. There are charted chords, etc. Now, the one thing about that, like, to me, that's the cleanest moment to make a jump. But you'll notice it is kind of abrupt. The dynamic changes. It gets much louder very quickly. So there are a couple ways you can alleviate this. You can stay on the A minor. And gradually transition it to a strum. Now notice I'm still kind of doing the top note pattern. Well, it's the second highest note, but that I was doing. I'm not going straight to the I'm not going straight to that. I'm still doing and I'm just ramping the volume up. Well, I'm on the Downeaster Alexa. That's how I like to do it. I think that's the transition is at the same point, but the dynamic change starts a little earlier and it ramps it up so it's smoother. Now, if you want to make the dynamic change a little bit later, you can also do that too, because those first few chords are the same. The only trouble with that is then you still have to find a spot to make the jump to the strumming and the more heavy-handed pattern. Now, I guess you don't have to. If you wanted to, and I don't know that I have the guitar chops to pull this off, you could play the entire Downeaster Alexa still doing the finger-picking pattern. Well, I'm on the Downeaster Alexa, and I'm cruising through Block Island Sound. I have charted a course for the vineyards. Tonight I am Nantucket bound. We took on diesel back in Montauk yesterday. Left this morning from the Belle of Gardner's Bay. Like all the locals here, I've had to sell my home. Too proud to leave, I work my fingers to the bone so I could own my Downeaster Alexa. So you can do it there as well. Again, it's all a matter of personal taste, and also depends on what instrument you're playing on, what other arrangement, ideas you have, what other, band members you have playing with you. I'm just here to plant the seeds, as I've said many times before. Now, I don't really love doing this segue the other way, as I mentioned, but sometimes if the mood strikes me, I will do one little thing at the end of Downeaster Alexa, because after the last chorus, I don't even know what you would call a verse and a chorus in this, because it doesn't have any repeated parts. It's sort of an A section and a B section, really. After the last B section, there ain't much future for a man who works the sea. But there's no island left for islanders like me. Yeah, 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 yo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm just glad I got that on camera, because that high A note does not come easy in full voice. But so obviously, that's ramp up, big crash finish, and I generally like that better. But if you're doing it, a more mellow version anyway, or if you want to bring back the mellowness at the end, you can take that last, because it's just C, G, A minor 4 times. You can take the last one and reintroduce the finger picking pattern and just bring the volume way down. So that would sound something like, yeah, 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 yeah. Just, a little smile and wink at the end. So you can do that too. But that pretty much covers at least how I like to do this. As I said, feel free to mix and match, do what feels good to you and the musicians you're around. Just a fun little idea, and honestly, like I said, this one is just, it was kicking around in my head for a while, and I was trying to figure out the optimal way for me to do it, and I think I have. So hopefully you've enjoyed, hopefully you've learned something, and I will see you again, ideally sometime before too terribly long, right?